Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our new conversation today. We're going to be talking about how to make work stress your friend. Yes, we all don't tend to love work, but hopefully with our conversation with Dev and I, we will show you how stress can be your friend. Well, or maybe not. But the idea is that, a lot of us are working very hard, and I'm a doctor. Dev is a clinical psychologist. Is that correct, Dev? Clinical psychologist?
No, occupational.
Same thing. Occupational
Your,
psychologist.
your
Dev.
first mistake.
My first and only mistake. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Dr. Shompal. Thank you for joining us. I'm really focused on prevention is the cure. That's my main aim. And I've been a doctor for around 11 years. And it sort of started when I worked in refugee camps. And I really saw the impact. We didn't have much around us. And I saw the impact of having simple changes can make a huge effect. And what we have around us really can change us and make us a healthier and happier person. So I believe, again, prevention is the cure. And I'm a medical doctor, and I've worked in refugee camps. I worked in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the UK. And it's a great honor and privilege to have Dev in the house. I've known Dev for a long time. Of course, this advice is general in nature. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write them down below. If you like what you see, please support. Click a like on Dr. Shompal, DORCTOR Shompal. Go on Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube. I produce videos too. And it's a real honor to have Dev here. Dev Modi is an occupational psychologist, and he definitely has been quite impactful on my general learning and my ability and on my way of practicing medicine in an interesting way. He's a leadership expert and a chartered organizational expert specializing in inclusion and diversity. Over the last 20 years, he's not that old, he's quite a young guy, but he's gained experience of working in-house and as a consultant with the world's largest global brands. His core areas of expertise are inclusive leadership, assessment, team coaching, and cultural change. He's got a number of qualifications. He works in 2 cities. He works in London and Malaga. And he's a great guy. He's also released a book. It's a great book. He's the author of a book called the Inclusive Leadership Scorebook, a framework to unlock the power of diversity in your organization. And a brand new, oh yes, thank you, Dev. Please show everyone that book. Yeah. So thanks, Dev, for joining us. Are you, Dev, because you kind of, Dev, you know what, you sort of like, because you're not showing us your background, it sort of stops the book from being seen properly, Dev.
I know, my background's really rubbish.
So
hence my dream background. And it seems like you're in a sauna, so
yeah, I'm in a big sauna. There's all these books here on the sauna. That's what you tend to do. You have a sauna with
bizarre.
No, it's actually a very cool wooden house. It's actually pretty incredible. But thank you, Dev, for coming. I really appreciate your help. So we're talking about work stress, Dev. So for those people who don't know what work stress is, Dev, can you define what the difference is between stress and work stress for us, please?
Well, I think I'm just going to use very common sense layperson definitions of things because that's what sticks for me in my head. So the way I define stress in general is any time where the resources that you have are overwhelmed by the demands put on you from the environment. So you have a certain amount of energy, resources, the environment is demanding more from you, and that puts you in a position of stress. And if there's a little bit of stress, then you kind of live up to it and you push yourself forward and you uncover new potential, and it can be a good thing, it can be a healthy thing. Like going to the gym or doing any kind of sport is an element of stress that you put on your body and your cardiovascular system, your muscles, and that enables you to grow and build muscles, right? But in the same way, using that metaphor, if you overdo it, you end up getting injured. And I think it's the same thing with stress, that if you have consistent, persistent stress over time, then it becomes unhealthy. So some areas of science talk about good stress being called eustress, which just tries to separate out the word. So eustress is a positive form of having a stressor that helps you to grow. But stress in general is seen as a negative if you are not dealing with it correctly. And a resilient person is someone who's either they've learned the skills or the capabilities, or they naturally have the ability to manage their life in such a way that they overcome stress, even when new things come into their life, that they're able to quickly adapt and respond to that in a way that's really proactive, constructive. And I think the last 12 months has really put a lot of pressure on so many different people who maybe thought they were really resilient, they thought they were really good at managing stress, and all of a sudden, maybe they're not able to manage or cope with the challenges upon them. So I think it's a topic that is not going to go away. And I'm sure it's been trending for the last 12 months on the internet. And I think it will continue to trend for probably the next decade. I don't think it's one that's going to be easy to solve. And the reason why I think it's not easy to solve is because, of course, there are individual habits that contribute to being stressed out. But I'm also a big believer that it's not just about the individual, it's also about the system that we live within. And the system itself is in some ways designed to push people to their limits when it comes to health and well-being, but not in a good way. So we'll talk a bit more about that, but I'll stop there.
No, that's really interesting, Dev. Thank you for talking about that. So you're saying almost like organizations and governments, have obviously a big influence on how we work, right? So major corporations and things like that. So
yeah,
obviously there's a big onus on, everyone's got, you hear corporate culture, or every single organization has a different kind of culture, right? Do you think there are any particular companies that have a huge or great culture where they can reduce their stress and improve well-being and also improve efficiency? Because ultimately, obviously, companies work for profit, right? So they want to maximize profit.
So I think a lot of this really just depends on one is the leaders within that organization, and also the industry that organization is in. If it's a fast-growing industry or sector in the economy, and it's like flush with cash and it's making lots of money, that can often lead to, I guess, a bit more of a relaxed environment potentially, or maybe more resources to pay towards employees' well-being. But if you're in an industry sector where there's layoffs, the redundancies, you don't know if your job is secure, then that's going to lead to a very different type of stress. And that's beyond the control of the individual. Like if you happen to work in the oil and gas industry or travel industry over the last 12 months, you might well have a different type of stress to, say, someone who works at eBay or PayPal or Amazon. There's a different type of stress. One type of stress at eBay might be, well, wow, we're growing really fast during COVID. That's a stress in itself, but it's because you're making lots of money. And someone else is working at, I don't know, EasyJet, and they're stressed out because their job is insecure. And it's, the individual could be exactly the same person, but because of the context, they might respond in a very different way because it's kind of beyond their control, the external situation. But then, of course, we've got to focus on what's within our power, because unless you are the CEO or a very senior leader, you can't necessarily influence the system that you work in. As you know, as a doctor, how much can you influence the health service, whether you're in Australia or whether you're in the UK, wherever you are. But you can influence your own little world. So that's the area that I think the people who are listening to this might well be focused on, that aspect. Focus on what you, like what I say to my clients, is control the controllables. Control the controllables, which is really be clear on what is within your control and focus on that, rather than focusing on things outside of your control, because that again will just cause you more stress. And I've seen that happening with COVID and the economy in the background. There's so much stress in the system. And sometimes, even if you're not personally going through something, you experience the stress of other people, especially if you're, in a strange way, sometimes the more empathetic individuals, the more compassionate individuals may well be feeling more stress on behalf of other people, because they find it really hard to disassociate themselves with other people's suffering and pain, which can be a really powerful skill and quality, but also it can mean that people can become quite stressed out for sometimes confusing reasons, or reasons that are unconscious. Whereas I've found that some individuals who are quite detached, kind of self-centered in many ways, self-focused, when there's lots of stuff going on in the world that doesn't affect them, it can be a positive for them in particular, because they don't get affected by it. It's like, well, that's happening to everybody else, I don't care. But the challenge is when something happens to them, it's also really difficult for them to cope with it as well, because they don't really have a sense of relationships where people are empathetic back towards them. So you have all these different types of personality styles, which is an aspect of my career, looking at personality style and how it impacts the way people lead and live their lives. So it's important to understand the type of person you are, what works for you in terms of work-life environment, and then make some choices. Make choices to change your environment, or change your behavior, or change your perception. They're the three factors that we have within our control to a certain degree. The one that's most psychological is changing your perception. The second is actually changing your behavior. So saying or doing things in a different way, physically or verbally. And changing your environment is literally, I'm going to leave this country and go to another country, or I'm going to leave this organization and go to another organization. That's like more drastic change of the environment. And sometimes can be harder to do depending on your circumstances. So, these are the three things that we have within our control, and it's best to focus on them.
So control the controllables. Essentially, there are three things you're saying. One is perception. One is your environment. Yes. Is the environment
behavior? So perception, behavior, environment.
Environment. So can you explain, like, for example, perception? So what if you so people that are stressed at work? So how do you change your perception if you're stressed at work, or your boss is giving you a hard time, or you don't like your job?
So perception is more you could say the unseen, the invisible. It's all the stuff going on in your head. Whereas when I refer to behavior, I'm referring to the things that are visible, the things that people can see and hear you do.
Okay.
So someone would say, well, perception itself is a behavior because you're having to do something on the inside, but that's just, semantic. So perception might be around reframing, for example. So if say your boss is being like a bit of an ass, can you reframe it in the context of the bigger picture? Can you reframe it by comparing what you do have to what you don't have? How much of that is based on your level of sensitivity, or maybe lack of security about who you are, that someone else's judgment of you affects you more than your judgment of yourself, for example, or the reality of the situation? So I think that's where perception comes in, is going kind of deeper within yourself, being more reflective, and doing some of the work that's needed psychologically to help you become a more resilient person. How much of how you feel is dependent on other people's judgments of who you are and other people's behaviors towards you, versus how much of that is within your own control and influence. So if say, for example, you're driving down the road and you pull out a little bit too fast and someone swears at you, they drive past and they basically do some swear signs at you and they shout at you. Now you have a choice. Either you react to that and you just shout back and swear back, and therefore maybe that's going to be a good release for you. You're going to feel good about that, or it's going to make you even more flustered and angry and frustrated and like, I can't believe that person did that. Or you ignore it, you don't really give it much attention, or maybe you even smile and give them a thumbs up, right? There's all these different options that you can do. Some of them are a bit more humorous, some of them are about being detached, some are about kind of meeting anger with anger, meeting stress with stress, meeting frustration with frustration. So I think these are the choices that you have, and some of it's habitual because we have certain habitual patterns, some of which is kind of wired in over many millions of interactions, and therefore it's quite hard to change, and others are more possible to change through meditation, through reflection and coaching, self-coaching, or asking someone to give you some coaching or mentoring, or even just sitting down with a group of friends like me and you, Rishi, and talking it through with people, saying, I really overreacted to this particular situation. I don't know what was going on for me. The key is, are you the master of your emotions, or are your emotions the master of you? Are you always at the whims of the fluctuations of your feelings that go up and down, or are you able to distance yourself from your emotions to be able to be a bit more, let's say, in the flow, and be more objective?
So essentially, what everyone else does is irrelevant to how you react, right? So if things are, it's interesting. So then so you can control your perception through mindfulness, yoga, meditation. You can control, obviously, coaching as well, and behavior as well can also be controlled through that too, right? But then how can one control your environment though? Because environment is quite tricky to just get up and leave and move to another country, right?
Well, the thing is, you have to look at the situation and where you are, what the resources are that you have. Like, say if you're in a say you're stuck in some quicksand,
Hmm.
right? There's no amount of me trying to coach you to change your perception is going to stop you from basically drowning in the quicksand, right? There's no amount of positive thinking that's going to get you out of the quicksand. Or imagining, like, I know, like The Secret, imagining being on a beach somewhere is going to save you from the quicksand. If you are in the quicksand and you're drowning, there's really one option you've got is ask for help and get out the quicksand. Like,
Yeah.
focus on the primary goal. And the primary goal, I mean, there is a perception element of being in the quicksand, because they say if you're in quicksand, and I've never been in this situation, the more you struggle, the quicker you basically drown in
Hmm.
quicksand. That the best thing you can do is not move that much and get into kind of move very slowly through the quicksand to get out of it, and try and increase your surface area so that you're not sinking so fast and you're able to gradually get out. Now, so there's an element of knowledge and understanding that helps you to get out of the quicksand. But it also depends on how deep you are in the quicksand, right? If you're really, really deep in the quicksand, you've got to have a sense of humility that, you know what, I'm not going to be able to get out of this alive without some help. And then you've got to ask for the help. And that's the element of, you can't change, if you can't change your situation for whatever reason, then you've got to think about how you can change your environment and get out of that particular situation. And that might be asking for help. It might be tapping into resources that you have. Like, you might see a branch in the distance and you grab onto that. That's like a resource. You pull yourself out of the quicksand. Much in the same way, like a plane ticket or savings that you have in the bank might be your branch that helps you to get out of the quicksand. That maybe you just don't have the psychological resources right now to change the way you think about a situation and change your environment. Like, if you're going, well, pre-COVID, if you're going into central London every single day, maybe commuting an hour and a half each way, polluted underground, polluted city, and you started to feel quite unhealthy, how much of your perception is going to be part of you feeling unhealthy? Like, there's a certain limit to that, because actually the pollution is real. You can't think away the pollution. It's happening. You're breathing it in, right? So then it comes down to, well, I can appreciate London for what it is, but at the same time, I need to accept the facts. It's a pretty polluted city in terms of air quality. Actually, COVID has helped me to remove some of that, and actually, I like that. I don't want to go back to commuting all the time into London, which is pretty much 90% of employees now are saying that. They're saying, I like the office environment, but maybe 1 or 2 days a week. But if you give me a choice, I'd rather be like 60% of the time at home. And
Mm.
some of the factors are to do with health and environment, right? So you've seen with COVID, it's kind of initiated more empowerment for people to choose the way in which they work in terms of flexible working. Of course, there's negative factors in terms of isolation, but for most organizations I've spoken to, when I've spoken to them about their policies, they've pretty much come down to work anywhere. Work anywhere, which is, it's your choice. If you want to come into the office, we'll have an office space, but it's your choice when you come in. Or most people are coming in between a Tuesday and Thursday, so most people are taking a Monday, Friday as a working from home day. So you've got these 3 days in the middle of the week where people are potentially wanting to go into the office, and even that is not being forced upon anyone. And the rest of the time, they can work from wherever they want. So we have an amazing opportunity where the environment has changed by force. And now we have the choice to redesign work life in a way that works for us in the best way possible. Getting the right balance of independence and flexibility with also connection with other people. So yeah, it's a really interesting time, and I think people have more freedom and choice now than they may have done in the past. And it's about grasping that. You know, there's lots of opportunities if you're willing to see them,
Yeah,
and change the way you approach life.
well, that's great, Dev. Thank you for that very insightful topic. So I'm also a firm believer in, obviously my first degree was in e-commerce, digital business, and I worked in London as a consultant and I hated it, right? And I kind of, went back to my values, like what's important to me, how do I grow and develop, and how do I reduce my stress? So obviously I found 3 values which are really important to me. Connection, contribution, and justice is kind of like what I stand for. So I went back and did medicine. And with a lot of patients that I see, and with the help of your work as well, it's like I'm really focused on like value-based health. sounds like a weird thing, but value-based health is what I'm into. So when I see a patient, or when I see someone, it's like, are you happy at work? Like, are you happy in life? Are you happy in your everyday life? And most of them are saying, no, they're not, right? And they're not happy. Like, there's a guy some people just work in the supermarket or just work 9 to 5 with the same job. They're not enjoying their life. It's like a groundhog day. Someone was telling me the same thing I'm doing every day. And the money's good because I can't do anything else. And it's just easy, right? But it's really boring and it's not fulfilling. So I sort of go back to basics. I'm like, what are your values? What do you enjoy doing? What is it that thrives and you grow on? So in what sense do you think, values are really important to reduce one's stress at work? Do you mind commenting on those things, Dev?
I think values is very much connected to this idea of purpose and meaning in life. And if you have a purpose and meaning, then you can overcome major calamities in your life and challenges in life. You can better cope with them. Whereas if you don't have meaning and purpose, it can push you into a very dark place. Kind of, what's the word, where you don't believe that anything is worthwhile anymore. Whether it's this idea of life is meaningless, there's no point in me going forward. I think that can be a real big challenge for people. So meaning and purpose are connected to values. That if you're really clear on what do you find valuable, then you attach yourself to that, and almost any type of job can potentially serve you in terms of your values. Like there's this perception that, if you're like, say, a doctor, or if you're, I don't know, an artist, that somehow or other your life is more fulfilling than the person who's maybe working in the supermarket. It might not be the case. It might be the case that someone's gone into medicine and actually they don't really want to be around people. They're not that compassionate. They wanted to do something completely different, and they were forced into becoming a doctor because of their family, and now they're super stressed out. And you know that as much as me, Rishi, around the kind of the rates of stress within the medical profession. Some of that's environmental because of how much pressure is put on doctors and medical staff in general. But some of it's also because individuals are maybe pushed into careers where they're not really that caring. It's a caring profession, essentially. If you don't really care about people, it's I would say, pretty hard job to really do day in, day out with authenticity.
Unless you're a pathologist, man. Unless you see dead people all day. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But you might have someone else who's like really, they've accepted their kind of resources in life, they've accepted their situation in life, and they work every single day in the supermarket and they love it. And they, because they accept it and they see the benefit of it, they almost find the meaning in the ordinary, or what might be perceived as the ordinary. Like they are at the checkout and they engage with every single customer with so much love and kindness. They're stacking the shelves and they're trying to do it in a perfect way, because for them, perfection is a value in itself. And for them, that gives them a sense of meaning. And, I just think about the UK and you compare different supermarkets. And even now, like you go into Marks and Spencer's, and I believe even now with a lot of Marks and Spencer's, the way the staff treat you, and I'm speaking to someone from John Lewis just a few weeks ago, who used to be the HR director there, the way the staff at John Lewis or Marks and Spencer's treat you is different to, say, I'm going to use Morrison's as an example, or Tesco's. It might be a bit different because the care and attention that you're given, because maybe they're just cared more by their business, and therefore they see more purpose in the work that they're doing. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that is, to a certain degree, your choice to create the meaning from the work that you're doing. Like even washing the dishes can have great meaning for someone, even something as mundane as that. So it's up to us, I think, to understand how can we create meaning from the day-to-day, as well as also having maybe this overarching big, I want to put men on Mars, or I want to, put, I don't know, men and women into orbit around Saturn, or some crazy kind of big dream like Elon Musk might have. Yeah, that's kind of like an overarching vision that he has. But why is that important? Why is that particular thing important? And maybe it's about freedom, maybe it's about sustainability, who knows? I haven't really looked into it, but I think that's where the values come in. So whatever you're doing right now in your life, think about what are the values that you stand for. And whenever you've got any kind of frustration, it's usually down to values conflict. It's where you've got two values that you are trying to live, but they're in conflict with each other. Because the way you're fulfilling each other's values are actually opposing each other, and that causes stress.
So you're saying that you should be happy whichever job you're in, as opposed to focus on what your values are. Is that what you're saying, Dev?
I'm not saying necessarily happy, because happiness can be in terms of the feeling is a fluctuating phenomenon, right? Like there's so much emphasis put on happiness as a feeling, but what I'm talking about is meaning, which is kind of it's a different kind of, it's not happiness, it's more, I would say, fulfillment or satisfaction, which is, you know what, life is going to go up and down, but I'm going to just accept that this is the way things are, and I'm going to aspire to change it and improve it. But at the same time, I'm not going to beat myself up every single day because I haven't reached the next big goal. Like, I'm worth £1 million today. I'm not going to be happy until I become, I don't know, worth £10 million. I mean, what a terrible psychology to have, because that's pretty much, you're guaranteed to be miserable now until you reach that goal, rather than let me be happy with what I have and aspire to have more, but let me not forget what I already have. So it's that kind of psychology.
So then, how does
you think about values?
So how does values work with, how does value based? Because, for example, my job before, right, I didn't like my job, so I went to do medicine. So should I just been happy doing my job, even though my values are different? Should I just accepted it and be thankful, or should I have made the shift? I mean, I'm happy I made the shift, but are you saying to me, if you're in a job you don't enjoy, just be grateful for it, as opposed to try and strive for something else, or strive to do something that you're sort of destined to, or something that's kind of intrinsic in you?
Well, I think there's an element of, with like your particular situation with e-commerce, you have to really think hard, can this particular industry or job fulfill my values? And if the case is at the moment no, is that because you haven't found the right organization, you haven't found the right kind of business? Is it really, do you really need to do a drastic change of kind of another 5 years of studying, for example? Like, there must have been something that drew you to medicine that was not just about the values. Maybe it was something else about the quality of the work or the type of work, as well as the values, because I think deep down the values could have been maybe met by doing something in e-commerce or some kind of digital business, but maybe you just didn't want to do that for whatever reason. So I don't know, the question's back at you, is do you feel like you made the switch too quickly from e-commerce, or you could have done more exploration to see, like, these are my core values, I think medicine is the way to go, but maybe I can satisfy those core values by sticking with what I'm doing? What was it that made you really shift?
The interviewer's become the interviewee. That's good, Dev. Nice skill.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's your job. It's your job, though. It's good. I think for me, I had a hole in my heart when I was born, right? So I had I've got a scar on my chest, right in the middle. Wow. So, a doctor fixed me and, made me whole again. And I've gotten a great life. And I've always wanted to be a doctor, I think, from the beginning. I thought I'm going to be a doctor. But then, I just thought it's going to take too long. It's kind of typical job. I don't want to really do it. So then I sort of switched. I think in my heart of hearts, excuse the pun, I sort of knew that I wanted to be a doctor. But then
why did you want to do that? What was it about it?
The idea of helping other people is very intrinsic to me. And the reason I didn't enjoy technology or working in that industry is it was very much like political. It's very much like, you're trying to make more money, do this, do that, feed some corporate company, get some fat cat to be bigger and more, I don't like politics. I don't enjoy work environment, For me, it's more important to make a difference in people's lives. It sounds cliche, but I felt that I would make a difference by being a doctor, much more than if I created a website or did something in technology. You could potentially, right? But for me, I looked at my values. I wrote down a list of jobs. I'm like, what that makes me happy, right? I still had my job, but then I did some work experience and I realized that's what I want to do. Like, I want to be a doctor for sure. So I just switched. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? It's interesting that you're sort of like, rather than just doing a 180 like I did, maybe you should just look at what you're doing and see if there are things that you enjoy in it. And then what you enjoy, maybe you can go to a different organization, or maybe you can see things in a different way. That's an interesting thing.
Because I think your point around helping people, because I think helping people can be done through so many different types of jobs. But then you've got to ask yourself the question, which is, what is the specific way in which I want to help people? So it's thinking about the values is just a starting point. But if you just get stuck on the values, you're still going to be confused about the next step in your life. Then you've got to ask yourself the next question, which is, okay, I want to help people. What's the specific way in which I want to help people? And why is it that I want to do it that particular way versus a different way? So, you know, maybe for you, it's about, well, you know, that one-to-one interaction with the patient, for example, being able to help them directly is like really important to you. And that's something that you didn't feel you could get through e-commerce in any kind of shape or form. You could help people, but you couldn't get that one-to-one kind of interaction. So potentially that could have been something for you that was really important.
No, that's very true. You actually nailed, you did. That's essentially what it is. The idea of connecting with someone on a one-to-one level and to help them to understand what's really going. So they can't, some people, you know, they can't really say things that are going on, but when they close the door with a doctor, they can express things, you know. The idea of having that special connection so you can really help improve someone's life is a great thing. And it's not just that, it's like a knock-on effect. So if I help the person's life, then their relationship improves, then their relationship with their kids improve. It's sort of like it's a ripple effect, right? You throw something in and it gets better and better. So
yeah,
that is correct in what you're saying. But
so that, I think that's the key, right? So first step is, what are the values that you have?
right.
What is the difference you want to make in life? And then what is a specific way in which you want to live those particular values? So my purpose might be, I want to create an inclusive society for people to live in, right? But like, there's a million ways in which you can do that, right? There's so many different ways you can create an inclusive society. But then it's like, what is a specific way in which I want to create an inclusive society? What's my contribution to that? And that's when you need to get into the details of it all.
So you're talking about finding your mission, right, and your purpose. That's what you're talking about here.
I think that there's an element of it is ever evolving. So
Like,
it's,
what's my contribution?
I don't think. Oh, I got some feedback.
Sorry, go.
I don't think you have like an epiphany and you have this one purpose, and for the rest of your life, that's your purpose. And if you haven't found your purpose, there's something wrong with you, because that can also cause a lot of stress for people because they feel frustrated that they haven't found the one thing to really go for. I think purpose is ever evolving. Like, your purpose might be something for now, and then you get some insight in the next couple of months, and then it evolves and it changes depending on your experiences. Like, I'm sure for many people, their purpose before they had kids is maybe quite different now after kids, or before they were married and now being married, or, you know, as they go into a different phase in their life, being retired, their purpose might evolve and change. So I think it's understanding that purpose and meaning evolves and changes depending on your life. But it's important to focus on the things that really matter most to you. And I think differentiating between the externals and the internal things that you really care about. So how do you separate out status, money, and some of these external factors like hierarchy and power from the internal things that you really care about? So extrinsic motivators, you ask people, what do you care about? They say, well, I care about being the CEO, I care about having millions of pounds, whatever it is. Differentiating between extrinsic motivators and intrinsic motivators. And if people get too focused on extrinsic motivators, including myself in terms of my own personal development, that's when I've been the most stressed out, is when I focus too much on extrinsic motivators, and then I've been too much focused on comparison.
Can you define, sorry,
to
layman terms, what's extrinsic and intrinsic motivators for general, like, you know, non-psychologists?
So extrinsic motivators would be anything that is to do with kind of material elements, like acquisition, acquiring objects, whether it's cars or houses or whatever else. It might be to do with status. So are you in the upper class? Are you going from working class to middle class? Status driven. It might be to do with hierarchy in an organization. I want to become one of the top guys in this organization. It might be to do with acquisition of money in general, just money to acquire money for the sake of acquiring money. The other is power, political power or organizational power, or even power within a friendship group. These are all different extrinsic motivators. And it's essentially anything where people can see or observe who you are and what you're about. So I'll give you another good analogy that I read somewhere. I can't remember which book I got this from.
I think it was Dr.
So
Shompau's book. Was it Dr. Shompau's book, Health and Wellbeing?
I don't think so. I don't think it's been released yet, has it?
No, it hasn't. No.
So the easiest way you can think about the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivators is imagine that you are stuck on a deserted island, and there is no one else on this island, and you can have whatever you want. You can have whatever you want, but no one else is going to be able to see, because you're the only human being left on the planet and you're on this island. What would you care about? What would be most important to you? Is the Lamborghini important to you if no one else sees you with the Lamborghini? Right? How important is a Lamborghini going to be if you're the only one driving around, but no one's seeing you driving it around? It's just, how long are you going to have fun with that without the affirmation that you get from other people? You're in a big giant mansion, but no one is there to see it or experience it. It's just you. How important is that mansion going to be for you? How important is the title of CEO going to be if there's no one else around you to say, hey, you're a CEO? So it's a really interesting way of thinking about how many of the things would I really still care about? Like, would it make a difference if I had, like, if I said to you, you're going to be on a deserted island, no other human beings on the planet, but you're going to be worth $1 trillion. Would you care about that? Would make a difference. So extrinsic motivators are pretty much the things that you want in your life that are really only valuable because they're not inherently valuable. They're valuable because of the way other people will treat you, because of the perception they have of that particular object or state. And that can make for a really interesting little mind experiment.
Yeah. And then what's intrinsic motivators then? That's pretty phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine you're on that deserted island. What would you really care about? You're the only person there. What suddenly would become more important to you?
Vitamin D.
Yeah. Is there something else I can help with? Oh, stupid Siri just like goes on all the time now.
It's okay. We should get an Android phone. We should get an Android. Anyway, I kept telling you though.
So yeah, what would you care about, right?
Water, sustenance,
But like, let's say you figured out the food problem, like survival problem, then what becomes important to you?
I want to talk to people.
Yeah, I mean, you naturally will want to have some kind of sense of engagement, and if there's no humans around, then it'll be with like nature and animals, and
yeah.
But you look for connection in the environment around you. You look for a sense of peacefulness, happiness, joy. I mean, they're intrinsic motivators. The things that are not really dependent on anything external. I mean, of course, joy and happiness, you do need to interact with people, but it's more within yourself. It's within your psychology. You don't need $1 million to have fun in life or to enjoy yourself, or to be healthy. You just need to have a different type of mindset. So it's focusing on those elements of life. Ultimately, we need a bed, and we need a roof over our heads, and we need a certain amount of nutrients. Once we've figured out those problems, which unfortunately still in this world, I don't know, billions don't have those basic necessities. But those of us who have figured it out, or have had the good fortune of being born in a country where it was kind of figured out for us, it's like, can we be grateful for that?
Yeah.
Because we almost take it for granted. We kind of just say, well, yeah, but I deserve all these things. Why do you deserve all these things? Was it your choice to be born in the UK or in Austria or in Germany or US? Like, was it your choice to be born there? No, you were born there. Now, if you're a religious person, like, and spiritual, you say, well, it's reincarnation. And if you just believe in, evolution, it happened by chance. But the point is, you didn't do anything to get these things that you now benefit from. So the thing is, you've already got a head start in life. But how often are we going to be grateful for that head start in life? Like, there are many places in the world where people are born without the basic amenities of life.
Yeah.
But because they have nothing else to compare it to, they just accept that's the way things are and they get on with it. And they actually might be happier because they go from having no water one day and walking 10 miles to then suddenly having a water pump in their village. And for them, that's heaven on earth.
Yeah.
That's completely a transformation of their life. And they are joyful every single day because they remember the days when they used to walk 10 miles under the hot sun. And then for us, we're born with running water, we're born with heating and electricity and all these things. So we no longer see that as a benefit. We just take it for granted, right? That's just the way life is. It's like, I want more than that, that's not going to keep me happy. And so I'm talking from the place of not having solved any of these things, but having observed them and experienced them on a regular basis and understanding that actually there are a lot of people out there that might not have the degrees and the status and the money, but from a psychology point of view, they are probably just more naturally happy than we are because they live a simpler life. And the point is that we can learn from that. We can learn to live a simpler life and appreciate more what we have rather than what we don't have. And hopefully that moves us to a place of giving rather than just wanting and taking from the world around us.
Yeah. Wow. Deep thoughts, man. That's very good. So obviously you've had 20 years of clinical psychology, right? You worked 20 years in occupational psychology. I keep getting clinical because I keep seeing clinical psychologists, but occupational psychologists, right? Like, what are the three things you think, if you're going to cut it down to three things, like easy tips that people can just say, okay, look, to minimize my stress, to maximize my well-being, what are the three things I can do, right? Because like the thing is that I've found, I've seen how, if we think about like, oh, everyone thinks about retirement, like I need to retire. If I invest early, I've got to invest early so that I can relax when I'm older and I don't have to work so hard. The money needs, someone told me today, I need to work so the money just works for me. I can sit back, chill out. I just get a passive income, don't do anything. That's the best life, right? But what people don't realize is that the majority of our time is spent at work, and our health and work are very much intertwined together. So health and work are interlinked. And I see a lot of people with that, right? So your work, your stress, and your environment equals your well-being, from my understanding, right? Also your home life. But stress at work is real. And with chronic stress, you cause chronic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure. Some patients, they get so stressed out, they end up having to, have high blood pressure, which can also ultimately damage their kidneys. That can end up, and there's some patients that actually have to end up having dialysis, which is they have got so much damage from high blood pressure, they have to have, dialysis to filtrate their kidneys, that they have to end up having a kidney transplant in the longer term, right? This is an extreme case, okay? Or heart disease, they have a heart attack. Let alone talking about mental health diseases like anxiety, depression, all sorts of things. So with your 20 years of experience, can you cut down into 3 or 5 layman term phrases or tips that people can do to really make sure that they minimize their stress and maximize their well-being?
Well, I think purpose, wisdom, and contribution are the 3 words that come to mind that I've used in my coaching and in my practice as a psychologist in the corporate arena. Identify what your purpose is and go for it. Spend the time to understand true wisdom, real wisdom that will help you and the world around you. Tap into the wisdom, not just of today, but from ancient times, that speaks of universal truths that are still relevant today. And 3, contribution. Think about how you can make a difference in the world and give back somehow. And it might not be giving back today, it might be giving back in the future. I think it's important to remember, and I'd like to remind myself as well as anyone listening to this, the world is ticking away in terms of time. And as we speak, a lot of things are being destroyed. Natural environments are being, and habitats are being destroyed. People are living in extreme poverty. I mean, there's lots of positive things, of course, in society as well, but we have not solved some of the basic needs of a large majority of the population. And I think contribution is about, how can I think about helping to solve some of those things? in a way that really makes a difference to people's lives. And how do we do that is through individuals making the decision to make a contribution, and in whatever shape or form you can. So I think those three things enable us to be less self-centered and to be more selfless, to see our lives as a moment where we can be grateful, but also to serve others, and to see our own suffering in the context of the bigger picture. And it's not to deny people's suffering, like suffering is a relative concept, and it's not a case of being blind to the fact that people are suffering, going through a hard time. At the same time, putting that in the context of the bigger picture really helps. So I'd say those three things can help people overcome stress and to make a difference, a positive difference in the world around them.
Wow, very profound. So trying to do some community work or trying to help make a difference in people's lives. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, it sounds silly, but ever since I came back from London, like, I've really got this. I'm just like, life is too short, So, at work, that I work in a surgery, but I make, like, every week I just make a point to, like, give, I don't know, desserts or sweets or fruits or vegetables, anything. I kind of give it to the staff. I just put it on the table just to help them, so they feel a bit happier in life, right? So they just feel like, I mean, that's not even, I'm not blowing my trumpet. It's not like making a big difference, but the idea of the work environment being happier just purely by giving a bit more, and rather being so selfish, like, oh, it's all about me, I'm going to keep my money, forget that. Giving more allows you to receive more. But that's a very small, simple example, right? But community work.
I think your point is small acts of kindness. I think is an important concept. Is you can have the big projects that are kind in a big way, make a massive difference to someone's life. But you also have the small acts of kindness, which can create healthy relationships in your family, create healthy relationships in the workplace. How often are people spiteful and backstab and political in the corporate arena because they're just not really satisfied or happy with themselves, and they're jockeying for power. They're not able to be kind to other people because they see that as an opportunity to pull someone down, rather than to encourage them. So I think small acts of kindness is a great place to start, and then being open-minded to some of the bigger things that you can do in your life. Like for me in particular, writing the book on the Inclusive Leader Scorecard, which is this theoretical framework for people who want to, in the business world, really make a difference to society, but also the organization they work in, to create a healthier workplace that is focused on well-being and belonging, and psychological safety, but also a brand that really makes a difference in the world, that if it's doing negative things, that leader challenges that and tries to influence the organization's brand as well. So for me, I was thinking the motivation for writing the book was I wanted to share with the world ideas and concepts that can make a difference. And for me, it's through leadership and it's through the corporate arena. So I'm thinking, well, if I can change one leader in a corporate and that corporate has 20,000 employees, there's potential of influencing all of those people through one person. So let me focus on that particular arena. And given my background, my specialism, my experience, it's like, why not focus on the top tier of the corporate world to make a really big difference? And putting it into a book or doing an app or doing a website, whatever it is that you do, you write an article in your own way, find ways of sharing and contributing. And that will, I think, really help to develop the wisdom, the contribution, but also the purpose element. So rather than wait for the epiphany or wait for the time when you go on a big retreat somewhere or you do some kind of mystical ceremony, the idea is actually it's ever evolving. Let it happen, but just keep it at the front of your mind. So you will start to see things develop and evolve as life progresses. So yeah, I think that's definitely important. A big part for me around mental health and well-being is friendship and network and connection. Having a solid group of colleagues, but also friends at work, where we can engage and talk about things and share, is really important. And having a community of like-minded friends, a lot of guys that I've developed friendships with, where we get together on a regular basis and we invest in the relationship, and we have a laugh, we have fun, we chill out and we joke around, but we also focus on personal development and growth. And that enables a lot of these concepts of purpose, wisdom, and contribution to actually come together in a profound way. So
yeah, no, that's great. That's really powerful stuff. I mean, so tell us a bit more about the book, Devesh, your inclusion. But I know you mentioned it briefly, but show us the
yeah,
book
so
again. It's going to kind of fade in and fade out, but show us it again, Dev.
it's called the Inclusive Leader Scorecard. So you can see it there.
Yeah,
If I
no.
put it at a certain angle,
It's
there you
gone.
go.
It comes and goes. Okay.
It comes and goes. So it's called the Inclusive Leader Scorecard. You can get it on Amazon, and it's on a special deal right now for Dr. Shompal's listeners. But yeah, it's written for people in the corporate arena, leaders. It doesn't matter if you're a senior leader or you're whichever level you're at. I think you'll find it useful. And the subtitle to the book is the definitive guide to unlocking the power of diversity. And I think this is diversity in so many different ways: diversity of thinking, diversity of personality, diversity of people from different backgrounds, cultural, ethnic, racial. There's so many different types of diversity.
Very interesting. When I think about diversity, I think about color, but actually it's diversity of thinking, of many things, right?
Personality as well. It's also neurodiversity. So you might have someone who's got maybe dyslexia, or they've got Asperger's syndrome or autism, and it's actually, how can you embrace people from many different types of backgrounds and accept them into this workplace? And I think during COVID, organizations have a very important role in terms of people's well-being and health. Either it can make or break someone. If they're in the wrong organization with the wrong manager, the wrong industry, it's going to do your health a lot of damage. But if you find the right manager, the right leadership, the right organization in the right sector, I think it can really enhance your sense of purpose and meaning in life. It can really help you to have some stability. And stability is a real core aspect of actually having a healthy, happy life. There's no use in being like an entrepreneur if that's just not right for you. If the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur is just not right for your psychology, I understand your personality. But actually, mental health wise, you might be better off working for a corporate, but finding a healthy corporate. And there are healthy corporates out there that have good values.
Where are
they're
they, man?
purpose driven.
Where are they, bro?
I don't make a difference.
Where are they?
End of the day, corporates are just a group of people coming together and making a decision to work together. That's all a corporate is.
Okay.
And whether it's 5 people or 10 people or 100,000, a corporate is a legal entity, and legally is actually treated like a human being. It's treated like a person, a corporate. But all a corporate is a number of individuals who have agreed to work together for a set purpose. And of course, corporates, just like individuals, can be profit driven. Like we were talking about extrinsic, intrinsic motivators. Corporates are the same. You have one corporate that really just cares about making profit and maximizing profit, and all they care about is money. But this whole idea that corporates exist to make money doesn't make any sense to me, because corporates are made of human beings, and human beings don't exist just to make money. So how can a corporate that is created by human beings only be designed to make money? I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense, because a corporate has to be more than making money. It has to be about giving value to society, and about providing a service that makes a difference. It's about contribution just as much as it is about profit. And it's about profit in a sustainable way. There's no use in making profit and being a leader in a corporation if the very corporate you're working for is destroying the environment and is destroying the environment that your children are going to be living in. That's when I provide coaching and advice and leadership advisory services to big corporates. And some of these corporates are, let's say, big culprits in the destruction of the world that we live in. Why do I still give them advice? Because if I'm not part of the solution, then how can I actually influence it? If I'm not able to actually engage with these organizations, how are they going to actually change if they don't have someone like me to provide an alternative point of view? So someone will say, well, why are you helping this oil and gas industry? Why are you helping the tobacco industry? Whatever the industries are. And it's like, I'm helping them to become more conscious. So hopefully they will stop doing some of the stuff they're doing, because a big part of the work I do is about raising the consciousness levels.
Yeah.
So the book is all about that. It's all about alignment with your values. It's about purpose. It's about brand activism. It's about inclusive capitalism.
Speak a bit more about purpose, man, if you can. Like, you know, how do you find out what your purpose is?
I mean, that's a whole, I think we've gone past that point, Mr. Champal. We've got like 3 minutes to go. But what I can say is I've got a section in the book which actually very simply takes people through a process to uncover their purpose. So it's an exercise I've done with like hundreds and thousands of leaders in the corporate arena, and it's a very simple meditation with questions. I mean, of course, there are books out there that are just about this topic in itself, but I wanted to make it easy for someone that if you just have 5 minutes, you read this one little section in one of the chapters, you'll have, if you do the exercise, you will definitely uncover your purpose. So, you know, I would selfishly like to encourage you to have a look at that.
No, please do. Please have a look on Amazon and anywhere else where it's available.
And check it out. And for you, especially, Rishi, you know, I will send you a PDF.
Oh, thanks, bro. I think you can send me a book, bro.
You can't share it. You can't share it with anyone else.
No,
the PDF's just for you.
No, thanks, man. That's very kind of you. I won't share it. But no, thank you, Dev. Like, it's been really impactful and very powerful talking to you, man. And you've always inspired me to do more and stuff. You've got very profound wisdom and understanding in the corporate arena. So I hope that's been helpful. You can always, if anyone wants to contact you, Dev, how can they find you if they want to contact you?
Pretty much the only social media I use is LinkedIn. So I think if you put Dev Modi in, you'll see my face with an orange background. And I think there's not many devs in the world at the moment, you know.
No, that's great, Dev. I really appreciate your help. And of course, please follow Dev. And if you like what you see, please, you know, subscribe to Dr. Champal, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're just following about stress. So we talk about different aspects of stress. So hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me. And I can always pass messages on to Dev if you need to as well. Thank you, Dev. Thanks very much. Do you have any last words?
No, I wish everyone the best who's been listening, or if you listen to this in the future, because I think it's going to live somewhere on Facebook. Yeah, grateful for the opportunity, Rishi, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, Dev. Same to you, man. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks again.
All right. Speak soon.
Dev.
Bye.
All right. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.